Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk about the match against Liverpool. The win brings City now 4 points behind Arsenal in the Premier League table. When you're thinking about previous wins against Liverpool, Manchester City haven't beaten them since the treble season when they beat them 4-1 at home that season. So that's a big one. Then you're thinking about both the 2-0 losses last season, the 2-1 draws the season before. So it's been a long time since they managed to beat Liverpool. Even when you're thinking about Arsenal as well, the other team that are in the title race, City haven't managed to beat them since, again, the treble season. You had the loss away to Arsenal in the 23-24, as well as the draw at home. And then you had the loss as well as the draw last season. So I think this was a really big win, despite the fact that obviously last season we beat Chelsea, beat Newcastle, beat Spurs, and then this season we managed to beat United and sort that out at home. So though we've had those kind of like traditional top six wins, as well as teams that are kind of up and coming, getting into Champions League football, we managed to beat those teams. Villa at home as well, for example. But the wins against Arsenal and Liverpool, those have been hard to come by in the last couple of seasons. I think last season expected really you just were that poor as a team for a good period of the season. If you're going to return to a good level like they did in the second half of the season, it still doesn't mean you're going to be able to deliver in the games against the very best teams. But yeah, this was definitely a big one. I think I saw a stat as well. This is the first time City have scored 2 goals outside the box against Liverpool in a match, so it tells you a lot about the quality of goals that we saw in this game. And then when you're looking at kind of confidence of the group, the momentum that they're able to build, I think people will start to look back on the Aston Villa game a little bit more favourably in terms of the injuries that they had, not having Nico Riley, Nico Gonzalez able to start the game, Rodri still injured. The kind of fine margins in the game the chances City did have and weren't able to put away, the fact that the Villa goal was that set piece, and even when we're talking about City struggling to press them in that game, in that first kind of 30 minutes, even with that in mind, it wasn't like Villa were able to create an abundance of chances and City were just getting ran through like they have done in previous games against Aston Villa. So I think we'll look back on that game a little bit more differently. Appreciate how hard it is to win away from home at those grounds. And when you're looking at this game going into the kind of like international break, the kind of games that we've got, I think we've got Newcastle away coming up. That'll be a huge one. And that's the kind of game where you think, I always look at it like if you win a big game like against Liverpool, Arsenal, etc., it's just as important that you follow up that next result with a win. Otherwise, it kind of takes away from just how valuable that big win was. So if we beat Liverpool and then lose to Newcastle away, then that kind of rubs all the shine off this win. If you follow this up with a win, knowing that Arsenal have to go and play, they're playing Spurs at home, but to play Spurs in the North London derby, a win is not guaranteed in those games, especially when Frank is more suited to playing as the underdog. They then have Chelsea the following week. They have Bayern midweek as well before that Chelsea game. So when you think about those games to come up, and even if Arsenal were able to just draw one of those games and City win their next 2, now we're down to 2 points and we're still in November. So it completely changes the picture. Whereas heading into the game against Liverpool, people were thinking whoever loses this is out the race entirely. Within a couple of weeks, it can really flip on its head. This title that people were trying to suggest was already decided so early in the season. So yeah, absolutely huge win. We'll get into more on the game now, but yeah, I just want to say that from the very beginning. So if we just move over to this here, very similar to the Bournemouth game. Obviously, Silva, Diaz, Shirky that were taken out of the team for the game against Dortmund. Then they come back in for this one, and very similar approach in that. If you remember my video talking about the Bournemouth in the second half, Iriola makes the switch to let his fullbacks follow our wingers inside. In the first half, because he wasn't doing that and they were trying to track the fullbacks, that meant that your centre-backs would jump in and you were leaving space in the back line as they were trying to deal with that midfield overload. So this time, very start of the match, Slot was letting his fullbacks follow them inside, be quite tucked in. And then obviously the knock-on effect of that is all the space that is out on the flank that Nico Riley and Matheus Nunes were able to expose throughout this match. When I was looking up the leaders for progressive carries, the longest progressive carries in the Premier League. The top 10 did include both Nico O'Reilly and Matheus Nunes. I think Nunes was around 13.3 and then O'Reilly 14.1 metres for the average length of their progressive carries, whereas somebody like Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, their average was between 7 to 8. So it just tells you but all of those players are able to progress the ball and carry it really well. But it's the type of carries, the areas they're able to do that, the distances that tell you a lot more about the qualities of those players. So in this match, both the fullbacks had all that space. Expected kind of 4-2-4 that we've seen from Liverpool press throughout last season under Arne Slot and continue into this one. So you had, obviously both the fullbacks are pushed out wide. Bernardo Silva will drop in out to that kind of right centre-back, right-back spot when need be. Shirky moves inside. Nico's quite free to drop between the two centre-backs and split them. At times they really weren't trying to build through Donnarumma. And they weren't heavily kind of using the centre-backs for the build-up. Obviously, they played a big part in that kind of first line, but it wasn't like in previous seasons where you feel like you need Gvardiol to be kind of crucial in the build-up. John Stones crucial in the build-up for City to find their way through Laporte as well. It wasn't like that so much. And this takes us back to those kind of early conversations about when Donnarumma's coming in. It's now on the team to find the rotations, the movements, to be able to create the space and find those kind of passes in the build-up to move through an opposition press, because you're taking on that trade-off of Donnarumma not being as good compared to Ederson playing out from the back and being that extra man. You're gaining something in other areas, so then you need to find a way around that. And you had Jeremy Doku coming inside, Shirky coming inside, Van Dijk not really comfortable jumping up. Same thing with Konate. You don't see much of that from those guys. You did see it in different occasions in this game, but when they did do that, you saw, I think, Van Dijk foul Shirky when he went up to one time to press from behind. Konate a couple of times when he did it to Erling Haaland. As he jumped up, Haaland was really clean and tidy with his hold-up play, where he just receives one touch pass off to Phil Foden. Those kind of stuff. So that wasn't really much of a factor in this game. And then when you're looking at the likes of Gravenberch, McAllister, trying to be aggressive on that press, you've got a winger coming inside of Jeremy Doku, and you're wondering who's going to track that guy, because Salah needs to keep an eye on Nico O'Reilly, so he's pulled there, and if Nico O'Reilly's really far out, sneaking in a little bit behind, then that leaves question marks for him, because you could have a potential 2-on-1 open up against your fullback in Conor Bradley. And then if you're Bradley, you're looking at Doku moving it inside. Do I follow him all the way forward or not? Because if I do, I'm going to leave the space for Nico O'Reilly to just completely get in down our right their right. Sorry, get my words out. Their right hand side. And then also, if you are Bradley, you're trying to be close to Nico O'Reilly to try and control that distance between the two of you there, so you can put pressure on if you need to. And Doku's gone maybe inside a lot, and you then could jump onto Nico O'Reilly. The two fullbacks position themselves really well to be not high up on the defensive line, so you're trying to get in behind them, to be kind of in between, so that it gives you that little bit of a question mark of is that my guy? Is that belong to Salah? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to Gravenberch? And they just caused loads of kind of question marks amongst all of the Liverpool players. So O'Reilly was just out the kind of eyesight of Salah, a bit behind, not close enough to Bradley, where Bradley definitively needs to go up there. You've got Phil Foden, Jeremy Doku in around Gravenberch, so he's not able to pick up one guy, know exactly who he needs to pick up. And so it was very difficult for Liverpool to really put good pressure on the ball and to be able to force turnovers, particularly in that first half. And then for City, you're opening up all the different ways that they're able to play through the lines, particularly with Silva and Foden dropping deep. Those kind of small spaces. I think John McKenzie's done a thread on this about how the kind of small space quality of Phil Foden that you see in the final third between the lines, receiving on a half turn, we're seeing in this season use those same qualities, but deeper on the pitch in the build-up to try and for City to be able to find their way through a man-to-man press when teams are being really aggressive. And when we get to that first goal, the lead up to that starts in a corner flag. It starts with 1-2s. It's Jeremy Doku beating a man and laying it off at Phil Foden, playing one-touch passes, and then Nico Gonzalez, is then able to play that long pass out to Matheus Nunes. So using the kind of small space ability of Phil Foden, but in different areas of the pitch in different ways this season. And then on the other side, when we're looking at how City were looking to press Liverpool, again, really interesting. So you don't have the threat anymore of Trent Alexander-Arnold to be able to play those long balls over the top. I think last season, the most passes from one player to another that broke an opposition defensive line was Trent to Mohamed Salah. So you've removed a kind of really big portion of how Liverpool would like to attack, as well as they just able to progress the ball up the pitch, or even just to relieve pressure, to have that pass to Salah to then stop City from really putting the pressure on top of them and give them that kind of outlet, whether that is sat in a low block or whether that is from a high press. They've lost that outlet. But then it also means if you're Man City and you're looking at this, you've got a way to kind of target them. So Virgil van Dijk, Robertson, the two better passers of the ball amongst that back four. So City decide to lock off the left-hand side of Liverpool. Haaland would sit on Van Dijk if they're a little bit further out when they try and look into play, and then when they're pressing high, he would curve his runs really quite pronounced out towards Van Dijk and away to push Mamashashvili, Konate, etc. over to that right-hand side. I think the goalkeeper as well is left-footed, so you're also making those passes a little bit more difficult for him by pushing it over to Konate. Foden starts a little bit deeper and then jumps out and timed it really, really well throughout this game to then put that pressure on Konate. And then you're then forcing Liverpool into a situation where they've got to play with, like you've only got those kind of outlets through to Salah, to Bradley, to Salah, down on that right-hand side, and then City can come over and squeeze them and really lock off on that one side of Liverpool. So Shirky will come over to pick up McAllister. That means then Silva can go nice and tight to Gravenberch. You've got Nico over here keeping an eye on where Szoboszlai's going to close off that option. And a big part that we've seen throughout the season, you think about one of the early videos I did, if you remember from watching it, it's Wolves, is managing the +1 situation at the back. This has been a consistent theme for City, the same as that kind of 4-1-4-1. So they look to maintain that +1 at the back, force Liverpool in Konate to play some poor long balls over the top, where they'd have the man advantage to be able to deal with those situations. That Nico Riley could be aggressive and get tight to Mohamed Salah because City had that man advantage among that back line. And part of that is on Nico to manage those situations of when I need to go, when I need to step back. And Bernardo Silva as well, I think did a splendid job in terms of making sure. So he would split between McAllister and Gravenberch. So he would lock off that kind of pass to McAllister. And then once Shirky's able to get tight across is when Silva's able to jump onto Gravenberch and really squeeze him and apply a lot more pressure on that regard. Liverpool definitely did try a few different things. So they would pull Gravenberch out the way. But instead Silva would just make sure that he's, again, locking that middle off between McAllister and then able to jump, and Foden would still apply the pressure to Konate, and Silva just managed to make that switch himself in the match. And then even when they were doing, you were looking, like I think they pulled Gravenberch a lot out to their right-hand side, and in which case Nico O'Reilly would push all the way up to Gravenberch, and then City would shuffle along and go man-to-man along the back line. So Liverpool did try different things to try and get around this situation where they were locking off Liverpool over to their right-hand side and keeping them over there. And they tried different things, Gravenberch dropping out, Gravenberch coming across, and so on. But City were able to just make little different adjustments throughout the match to kind of deal with that and sustain that. And they were quite happy for Robertson to be that free player. So and that kind of +1 I'm talking about on that back line, you're going to have a free player, the opposition are, somewhere else. And so what City made sure they did is that the free man was as far away from where they were looking to apply pressure to Liverpool. So they're pushing them over to that right-hand side towards the likes of Konate and Bradley on here to then play those long balls into Salah that are going to be rushed under pressure from somebody that's not as comfortable on the ball as the likes of Van Dijk. So they're forcing them over to those situations, and then Robertson is the guy right on the other side of the pitch. You don't have somebody like Trent who's able to find those passes. And even with that being said, like, very few players are able to pick those passes out consistently. And then when I was looking up the kind of numbers for the kind of like passes, so I think for Van Dijk, this was the least number of passes he's completed in a single Premier League match this season. Certainly for long passes, this is the least he's completed as well. And then on the flip side for Konate, this is the joint most long passes he's completed in a single match. This is the most passes he's completed in a single Premier League match this season. So you can see the difference there. That the point was to shift the ball, the possession all the way onto Konate, take advantage of the fact that he's not as good on the ball as Virgil van Dijk with that pressing setup. And so, yeah, very well done, very well adjusted throughout the match to the kind of like little details, as well as everything that we talked about in possession in terms of playing through the lines and so on. So from Manchester City, Pep Guardiola got this spot on. You can see some of the kind of things that have been a kind of consistent theme throughout the season. So as I mentioned, that kind of 4-1-4-1 we've seen from the games against United, against Bournemouth, and then in this one. See, I'm more happy to sit off at certain points of the game. So as this got more later in the match and see you're up 2-3-0, then they weren't looking to apply as much pressure, to sit more in that 4-1-4-1 mid-block. Earlier in the match, when he wanted to apply a bit more pressure, it was more of a kind of 4-3-2-1. So you would have this back four here. Nico in the middle, Shirky would tuck inside, Doku would stay on the same line as Nico, and then you have Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden either side of Erling Haaland that could spring up and apply pressure. But then later in the match, when they don't want to apply as much pressure, those guys sit back more as kind of like 2-8s alongside Nico Gonzalez. You clog the kind of middle, able to kind of cover the spaces between the lines that the opposition were looking to play those passes into. You've got Nico staggered, so you've not got that kind of obvious space for players to be able to pick up. And then also when they're looking to play out wide, obviously your formation kind of pushes them out there as well. It kind of just funnels them that way, particularly if you're doing that kind of 4-3-2-1 and then pushing up. You will funnel players out, that kind of like Christmas tree formation. You've also then got, as soon as the opposition are playing out wide, you've got Nico Riley there, you've got the winger there in Jeremy Doku, and then you've got the number 8 in Phil Foden over on that side. So you've already got 3 players there to be able to pick up and at least remove the very obvious pass inside and the players making those runs kind of through the half spaces. So as much as you're kind of sacrificing that pressure, that is the trade-off that you're making. You're giving up as much kind of forward pressure on the ball to try and recover it, but then being able to have those players to be more comfortable out in those wide areas and track the kind of passes between the lines. And obviously that kind of thing we saw a bit earlier in it, that 4-3-2-1 with Silva, Foden jumping out. That's what I think we'll see more of when they want to put more kind of pressure on the ball, and then in games where they are winning, they do have that lead. You see more of that 4-1-4-1, and the +1, as I've mentioned in earlier videos, this is something that he seemed to be intent in trying to replicate. So this press in terms of forcing them to one side, that's Liverpool specific. That's this specific to this game. Those kind of smaller details. We may see this applied to other opposition, depending on who we're playing against, depending on the players that they have, how they want to play. That's a kind of example of the kind of small details that you'll see game to game. But the kind of principle of wanting to play with that kind of 4-1-4-1 mid-block, and then be a bit more aggressive in that 4-3-2-1, trying to keep a +1 on the back line, trying to force opposition to play long balls into a more favourable position that we do have. That's been quite a consistent theme throughout the matches that City have had. But then the small details, I think, is something that they've been working on and trying different things out, change depending on the opposition. And you know, when you're early in the season, you do need to try out different ideas. You've got lots of players coming in. You think, how many players that need to learn the way that we want to press? Somebody like Shirky, who's coming from an environment where he wouldn't have learned as much high pressing, particularly the kind of level of detail that City will do it in. at when he was at in Lyon. So you've got that kind of learning curve for a lot of different players. But you are seeing in the more recent matches how quickly City are able to now adjust game to game, but also within game, to the different kind of setups that opposition will play, and then how the game kind of flows, the little changes that they'll make. The City can then make those kind of adjustments on the fly. You think about the Dortmund games, John Stones mentioned after that match how the way that Dortmund were pressing, they just didn't expect. They weren't set up correctly for that, so it took them a couple of minutes to be able to do that, and then quite quickly in that first half they were able to play through them. So we're now seeing that City time in games adjust quite quickly and be a lot more fluid, and that comes from playing the games, the time on a training pitch, and the time, quite frankly, to be able to learn all these different things, seeing them in action, bed plays in, and so on. And that's why you just got to be patient and see how things go over a longer sample size before you just jump in after one loss against Spurs, for example. If we just move, I'll just run through a few different things. Doku, man of the match. I'd say this was his best match for Manchester City. He has that kind of ruthless nature you saw from Raheem Sterling at his best, Vinicius Jr. when he's had his kind of best seasons, although he's not quite at it this season, where you're just doing it again and again and again and again. You're just not phased, almost like kind of goldfish memory in a way, in a good way, where you're just not phased by the fact that you messed up and not succeeded with that take on. That pass hasn't made it through. You haven't scored that chance. You haven't made that cutback pass correctly. You just go again and again and again. And that's exactly what he was like in this game. You think the very start finds Phil Foden really well inside the box. Poor touch from Phil. Takes it away. Otherwise, he's inside the box and able to get a shot off within the first few minutes. Instead of Doku going, I've created a really good chance there, and he's not taking it, he's just go again, bundles his way into the box. Several times after that, you've got the penalty that comes up after that. You've got the turn and shot inside the box in the near post that's well saved. It's just again and again and again and again. And so, yeah, gave lots of problems to Conor Bradley. I think when I was looking up the top 10 matches for Jeremy Doku for successful take-ons in a single Premier League match since he's joined the club, 4 of the top 10 are against Liverpool. So it doesn't matter whether it's Bradley or it's Trent, he loves playing against his team. No other team in that top 10 appeared more than twice. Liverpool appeared 4 times. So yeah, as I said, he loves playing against them. And for me, this is the level of Jeremy Doku now. Like, this is obviously his best game, but he's definitely gone up a level compared to last season, the season before. Been great to see. Very much as a starter now, week in, week out. Looks very tough for Marmoush to come in, depending on rotation, and then also looking at kind of specific matchups for different opposition. I think the way that Doku's playing a bit more inside also suits Marmoush, so you're not looking at a bit of a kind of drastic change, and especially with how great Nico O'Reilly's playing, the relationship he has with Jeremy Doku. I think that will definitely help Marmoush in some of the games that he does come in. But for the most part, Jeremy Doku looks like the guy who's going to start a lot of matches this season. And yeah, that kind of relentless nature, I think, driving the team on is really helpful when you're adding other players like Erling Haaland that are like that, Phil Foden's like that, Donnarumma's like that. More and more players that are just looking to make something happen on the pitch every single minute of the game that they can, that want to perform, that want to do their very best. So yeah, really, really good to see. I think, yeah, this is just a look at all his touches in the last 8 Premier League games. And I think one thing to bear in mind is that you're not going to see the way he played against Liverpool, the kind of role that he played, and it's similar to the Bournemouth one as well. You're not going to see that nor need that for every single game. So when we look at Burnley, when we look at Everton, not as good against Everton that he was against Burnley, but similar sort of games where you are breaking down teams that are sat low. He can also be excellent in those. I think he was very promising against Villa when he came on with Nico O'Reilly. And then also when you're looking at games like against Arsenal, where City were camped quite deep, and you do need a player to be able to get you out and deal with that kind of pressure that Arsenal were doing to try to contain City deep in their own half. He's able to deliver in those sort of games. That's something we'll probably face in the Champions League. We're not going to dominate absolutely every single team in the Champions League. There are teams like Bayern Munich, PSG, and so on, where they will have more of the ball, and you've got a player in Jeremy Doku that's proven this season consistently to be able to be an outlet when you are kind of camped in your own box and you need to move the ball further forward. So just a kind of like range of roles that he's played this season already. Given just how small that sample size is, we still got over 20 games to go this season in the Premier League. We're probably talking another 40 odd games across all competitions. So there's so many more games to come. But yeah, very encouraging to see all of that from Jeremy Doku. And then, sorry about that, we'll just move over to the goal. I should say, and I don't have this in there, but the build up to this goal starts with Nico Riley in our own corner, holding off Salah really quite easily. Phil Foden comes over to support him. Phil's able to take that out, does a really good job with his arms to keep the pressure off from Conor Bradley and not lose the ball. Passes to Jeremy Doku. Doku's able to beat a man, come inside, play to Phil. Phil plays to Nico Gonzalez. Gonzalez is able to find himself some room and then play that ball over the top to Matheus Nunes, who's then able to give you that long carry further forward. As I mentioned at the start of the video, the fullbacks were free in the space to drive City up the pitch. Nunes and O'Reilly, two of those players with those long progressive carries, they've got the legs and the running power to be able to do that, the engine as well. So Nunes is able to drive the team up the pitch. There's a good kind of like I would say 5 minutes, but a good like 1 or 2 minute kind of period, maybe more like a minute period, where City are just circulating the ball around, probing, trying to find space. Shirky does really good just to try to draw players in, make a couple of different runs, take their time, and then eventually they go back to Vardy on the halfway line. From Nico to Vardy, then Vardy skips Nico Gonzalez straight into Diaz straight into Matheus Nunes, who's free on that side. And then Nunes does a really good job to shape this initial cross here, as you're seeing, and then not take it. So he fakes that cross. And then now he's got the space, as Vert's coming in, he's got the space to be able to curl that cross properly into the box without somebody trying to block it. And then, yeah, wonderful cross. I think Haaland a little bit fortunate because Konate is able to get a flick on that then helps it go over to that other corner. But also it's on Erling Haaland to beat him to the jump. And it's a mistake by the defender to not make a good effort to jump in the way to win that header. So that brings City up to 1-0. Obviously, we had I should have mentioned a bit earlier, we had the penalty missed by Erling Haaland. You had the disallowed goal from Liverpool. From my perspective, I think it's fair to be ruled out, but I can see why it could go either way. It's one of those decisions, I think, where it's just going to be something. Some people see it one way, some people say the other, but for me it's offside. But I don't think it was relevant in terms of the way that the game was going to pan out, that we saw the performance across that first half. I don't think it was going to change the result. And then also with the penalty, that's our first penalty of the season. Very well done by Jeremy Doku to win that. And I think the last 5 penalties that Haaland has missed, one has hit the post, which is Sporting Lisbon. One was saved over to the bottom left corner by Pickford. I'd say that was a good save against Everton, in my opinion. And then the other 3 are low shots to the bottom right corner. So all I'd say is I think that kind of his technique when he's shooting over to that side is something he probably wants to look at and work on. Otherwise, kind of scrap that kind of shot altogether and look for something different. Otherwise, yeah, go for that left-hand side. But it's that kind of area of him trying to shoot low on the right-hand side. It seems to be a little bit too easily telegraphed. So yeah, I'd just say to kind of work on that. But yeah, back to the goal, 1-0 City. I think really well worked goal, but then a lot of the focus gets put on the cross and Konate rather than City being able to play out from their own corner flag, taking the ball off Salah, work it all the way from their corner flag, kind of long switch out to Matheus Nunes, is able to drive him up the pitch, and then taking the time to find the right time to move it into Matheus Nunes, who's free to then play that cross, and Erling Haaland is in the box to be able to attack it. We move over to second goal. This is our first set piece goal of the season, so nice to see. You kind of wonder when Haaland missed the penalty whether he's just maintaining that record for us that we haven't scored a set piece goal in the Premier League this season. But this is the first one. Bernardo Silva plays it short to Shirky. Shirky draws in the two Liverpool players towards him. And as you see, Bernardo just kind of ghosting up over here. And then when he's free, Shirky plays it over to Bernardo Silva. Bernardo plays it first time straight over to Nico Gonzalez. And then Nico Gonzalez takes a touch out of his feet and takes that shot. Again, fortunate on the deflection, but also, if you watch it back, it's Van Dijk that makes a very lazy attempt to try and deflect that ball. So you kind of get what you deserve for not making a real proper effort to clear that ball. It's very soft defending there. And yeah, great to see that Nico Gonzalez gets that goal. When you're thinking about performances of Rodri, one of his qualities is these goals from like edge of the box, just inside the top of the box, as well as the kind of like long passing aspect. And I think those are the two kind of things that we saw in this game, added to what Nico has already done so well this season. So yeah, really, really good to see. Good moment for him. And I think that was kind of key going into half-time, that you are 2-0 up. Get what you deserved for that good first half performance. And yeah, you think about how good Slot has been in previous seasons, making those kind of half-time adjustments. If you go in only 1-0 up, game feels a lot more in the balance. And also the margins are much finer for him to find something that does work, that's able to bring them more into the game and suddenly changes the complexion of it. And then second half, we do have this third goal. Again, small space play from City, playing short passes over on that side. Then free into Nico Gonzalez, who's able to pick out the long pass over to Nico O'Reilly this time, rather than the one he passed over to Matheus Nunes. Again, the fullbacks have the space for City. I mentioned this at the start of the video. The way Liverpool played, you gave the space out wide for the fullbacks to get into. If you're going to set up that way, you're going to give away that space, then you get what you deserve in this game, really. And yeah, Nico O'Reilly, tremendous job this season. He has the legs to be able to attack that space and get him behind. Long pass over the top, gets the ball, brings it down, very quickly lays it back inside for Jeremy Doku. Not taking his time with this as well was really quite key, because Konate's just coming across, and as soon as O'Reilly takes a touch, takes it down, he plays it straight inside. So Konate doesn't really have much time to kind of get set and be in a good position for that. Other players don't really have much time to get back either. So yeah, over to Jeremy Doku, squares him up, cuts inside. McAllister tries to jump out to try and stop that. And then shot from Jeremy Doku over into that top right corner. Quite similar to, I think it was a goal against Fulham when we played them at home last season in a 3-2. Similar sort of position, cut inside and shoot. He has scored other goals as well from that kind of zone outside the box. You think about, I think it was United in the FA Cup when we lost, or it might have been the Community Shield, one of the two at Wembley. And that was more low into the corner. I think he went near post. But he definitely has the ball striking to be able to score more goals. I think he just doesn't take as many shots, and he's definitely a little bit more inclined to being that kind of creative player. You think about all the times he kind of moves inside and has these really lovely passes out to the fullback, out to the right winger, or kind of like inside to the likes of Foden, Haaland, like we saw at the very start of the match, that pass into Phil where he has that poor touch that just takes the ball away. Those kind of passes from Doku, he's definitely a bit more inclined that way. But he should take more shots, and playing that kind of more inside role means that when you are beating a guy, you're just in a much better position, more central to the box, to be able to take those shots. So you're just going to have a better chance of scoring. So yeah, hopefully across the season we see more and more shots from Jeremy Doku, building on the kind of creative part of his game that we've seen already. And I think that kind of just caps off what was a performance I'd say is certainly the best performance by a winger this season in the Premier League, and probably one of the best ones for a long time. So yeah, really good, really good to see. And just before we wrap up, as we head into the international break, hopefully all the players come back nice and fit. Kind of nervously watch all the international matches. I think Haaland plays Donnarumma, so hopefully the two of them just have a nice clean game and don't injure one another. That would be kind of too comical. But yeah, hopefully all the players come back fit. And then we're looking at a really tough game against Newcastle away, despite the fact that they are really struggling in the league. Their form is much better at home than it is away from home. And as we know, it's never been a very easy match there. I think we did have a good opportunity to win last season. I think we made quite a meal of it, and I think the formation wasn't the very best. I think they had very good chances that were wasted. And then you go back to the 23-24 season where you had De Bruyne coming on, the Oscar Bob goal, the late winner. It's just not going to be a very easy match there. Particularly, it's going to be a 5:30, so a bit more of a kind of later kickoff. So yeah, not going to be easy at all. But yeah, this is the top 10 minutes played by Manchester City this season. All competitions is just broken down by Premier League, Champions League, League Cup. And I think only 4 players here, Haaland, Diaz, Foden, and who is it? Haaland, Diaz, Foden, and then I think it's Matheus Nunes are the only players here that were in the top 10 from last season. Which just tells you really... sorry, no, not Matheus Nunes, got that wrong. So Haaland, Diaz, Foden, Vardiol, those 4 in the top 10 last season across all competitions. And those 4 are again in this. So that's 6 other players from last season. You're talking Ederson, Akanji, Kovacic, Gundogan, and a few others that were in the top 10 last season. They're all not. They're either much lower down the order, or they've left the club. So that level of change. Donnarumma coming in, he will eventually be amongst the top guys. He'll probably end up playing the most minutes by the time we get to the end of the season. Tijani Reinders, new signing. Nico Gonzalez, new signing in January, bedded in now. Nico O'Reilly, Matheus Nunes as 2 fullbacks. Really fundamental to the team that you have fullbacks that are reliable and consistent. Those 2 are in the top 10. Jeremy Doku that struggled with those kind of consistent fitness levels throughout his first kind of 2 seasons. Really impressive to see how available he is this season, as well as Guardiola doing a good job of managing him. I think he's only completed 2 490, so he does get subbed off 70th to 80 minutes quite consistently to not push him all the way. But he's been consistent with his fitness levels. So to look at this is really quite promising when you're looking at the players that are there. And also when you're looking at the players that aren't there yet, you've got Marmoush, he will expect to play a lot. Cherki will expect to play a lot. Itanori should be coming into the fold a lot more. Yes, Savinho as well. You think he played a lot of minutes last season. He'll want to get more minutes and improve and take a step forward. So when you're looking at all these kind of things, City definitely heading in a good direction. I don't think they're the kind of best version. Players like Reinders haven't hit their best level. I mentioned Cherki and Marmoush. So yeah, I don't think this is the kind of very best version of the team, but they're trending in the right direction. There's a lot of positive underlying numbers, as well as the positive performances to back them up now, and the kind of big wins as we saw against Liverpool. This is the top 10 most shot involvements across the Premier League and the Champions League this season. Phil Foden is now top. It's the first time he's gone to be number 1. Crucial to the way that the team plays. As you see, shot assist, build up to shot, plays a really important role there. Tijani Reinders, Jeremy Doku, really good to see the likes of O'Reilly, Nico Gonzalez as well moving up there. I don't think Cherki and Matheus Nunes are that far behind either. But yeah, you can already see the kind of the main players starting to emerge over this opening portion of the period, opening portion of the season. And yet you've still got players like Cherki and Marmoush that really should become starters at some point, or at least should have periods in this season where they're playing like the kind of like starter quality players. So you've still got that to come into it. Rodri as well. So yeah, definitely be interesting to see the kind of way the team pans out. That's a lot of ways for the team to improve. And as Guardiola's mentioned in the last couple of press conferences, the team that wins the title is the team that improves the most over the season. You want the team to head in an upward trajectory. You don't want them to have their kind of best period between September and November. You want to have them, when it comes to March, April, May, really hit their peak at the right moment. And yeah, we'll definitely see how this team gets on when we get to that point. But that pretty much brings me to the end of the video in terms of takeaways from the match, things that stood out to me, talking through the goals, the importance of this win. And yeah, hopefully good international break for all the players, come back fit, and we get going again to continue that momentum with a tough game against Newcastle. Please let me know anything you think I've missed out or you want to talk about down below in the replies. Make sure you like the video to help support the channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. And we'll be back this week with plenty more content.